Hey guys, welcome to Reddit Brew. You know the drill. We're back at it again with the Reddit stories. So let's jump into it, shall we? An entitled father tried to get me kicked out of a store for having big breasts. I, 18-year-old female at the time, used to walk around the city often in order to avoid my narc mother. Yes, I know what you're thinking, but I was safe and always had a form of self-defense. That year, I experienced another growth spurt and went from a C cup to a double D cup. And I was getting a lot of weird looks when in public. As much as I hate to admit it, I was pretty young and naive, so I never thought it was because of the way my body changed, but in hindsight, people were likely staring at my, well, body. I started working at a call center, and one day, I decided that I was going to go to Walmart so that I could pick out some yarn for a crochet project I wanted to work on while at work. We were allowed to crochet to pass the time, as long as we didn't avoid the calls that were automatically answered on our systems. While I was checking out the yarn, I noticed a kid who looked like he was around 13 standing at the end of the aisle watching me. Thanks to my history of getting bullied and beaten up, I immediately grew cautious and started debating if I wanted to just leave and get my yarn at the Hobby Lobby across the parking lot. Before I could make a decision though, an adult man came up and started leading his son away. So I started to relax and thought that I was overreacting. That is, until the entitled dad came back. Excuse me, but where did you get your implants? They look so real. Excuse me? I was really embarrassed and shocked, and I was obviously getting creeper vibes from this guy. Your implants! He waves his hands in front of my breasts and gets uncomfortably close to me. Where'd you get them? I was at a loss for words and didn't know if he was serious or just being a creep overall. At this moment, the kid came up and poked my right breast, and I instinctively smacked his hand away, not caring that he was a kid. Excuse me, but you really shouldn't do that, especially to a woman. It's not polite, and it's considered assault. Entitled dad immediately got mad at me and started screaming at me to not touch his son. He said that it was my fault, and that if I didn't want attention like this, then I should just keep my fun bags put away. I was in tears and looking around for an escape, especially since the more the entitled dad yelled at me, the closer he got to me. He started telling me that there was no way my breasts were real and that he needed to feel them to know for sure. He even told me that I needed to let his son touch them so he could learn the difference between implants and real breasts. Remembering the fact that I had pepper spray in my bag, I pulled the can of pepper spray out and told them both to step back and get away from me. At this point, an employee turned the corner, having heard us yelling, and saw me holding the pepper spray. He freaked out and called for a manager before coming up and yelling at me, demanding to know what I was doing. Thanks to me being in tears and being so upset that I was unable to speak, the entitled dad was able to talk first and started lying to the employee that I was seducing his son and that I pulled my pepper spray out when he tried to come to his son's rescue. His son immediately started agreeing, and the employee who was taking their side was already saying that he was going to call the police. Entitled dad demanded that me and my big breasts be kicked out of the store. Thankfully, at that moment, one of my coworkers, who came searching for me because I had been gone for an unusually long amount of time, I had told him that I was going to Walmart quickly to grab some yarn, rounded the corner, leading a manager right to the mess. The manager demanded that everyone shut up and calm down. And when we had, he turned to me and asked me my side of the story. I told him and my coworker how the entitled dad insisted that I needed to let them feel my breasts to see if they were real, and how I had already explained I wasn't comfortable and didn't want their attention. The entitled dad backtracked on his story and tried to defend himself and his son, saying it was all for educational purposes, and lied that I had agreed to let let them touch me beforehand. This is when my coworker got mad and pointed at the camera at the end of the aisle, reminding them that it would have caught everything. The entitled dad and his son both went silent for a moment before making a break for the exit. The manager took off after them, yelling at them to stop, and my coworker berated the employee who was initially agreeing with two creeps, allowing a possible sexual assault. Of course, the entitled dad and kid got away, but after the manager reviewed the footage, the employee defending them was fired. And I never went back to that store again. In hindsight, I should have contacted the police, but I was a sheepish young girl who was raised by a narcissist and was never taught to stand up for myself. Please teach your sons to respect women and don't harass women. Plenty of us are insecure and don't want attention, and we'd appreciate it if you don't make things worse for us. Also, never assume that a woman's body is fake or that you are entitled to touch it. User Strawberry Peaches in the comments says, "So I have a kind of relatable story. I used to teach kindergarten at a private daycare. There were a few of my coworkers with bigger breasts. I would consider myself just above average, but nothing huge. There was this one kid who had a thing about touching the teachers he was talking to, like patting their stomach, rubbing their arms, or groping breasts. Nothing sexual in nature, like he would talk about some imaginative idea while touching teachers like a fidget toy thing. Well, one coworker of mine loved him to pieces and would let him grope her all the time. She would say he's not doing it sexually, he's just a kid, he doesn't understand, and it's not a big deal. Well, one day he does it to me, and I take a step back and hold his hands together in between us. And I explain that if he wants to hold my hand or rub my arm while he talks to me, that's fine, but do not touch my chest. He's like, okay, and proceeds to tell me whatever story he wanted to say. Well, coworker saw me tell him no thanks, and then got on my case about how I shouldn't be sexualizing his actions and that he's just a kid. I explained to her that while, yes, he's a kid, not everyone will find it appropriate when he gropes his future teachers. And what kind of habit are we promoting here? Like, there are other ways he can talk to people while touching them. I mentioned it to his mom, and even she agreed that he does it to her all the time, and it doesn't seem to matter how many times she says not to. He just laughs it off and says he's joking. Apparently, all the other coworkers knew about this habit and just ignored it for the sake of him being a kid. I was the only one who had a problem with it, but my intention wasn't to demonize or sexualize his actions, just redirect to something far more appropriate. Yikes. So much yikes. First, I'll address story 1 and the creepy AF pedo dad. Even if a woman does have implants, you do not get to just go up to her and ask her about her breasts. And it is especially not up to you to decide if they are implants or not. Please don't ask women about their bodies, ever. Secondly, in regards to everything we've read today, I absolutely hate the "he's just a kid, stop sexualizing his behavior" line. Like, yeah, he is just a kid now, but he's not always going to be a kid. And if he's taught now that non-consensual touching is perfectly fine, then it's going to be a problem when he's not a kid anymore. All this mentality does is teach young boys that it's okay to touch women as long as it's not sexual, and it tells women and girls to just deal with it, which is not okay, and this needs to stop being taught. Actually, I have a personal story of my own to add to this. When I was around 10 years old, my friend and I, who was also 10, were in the women's change room at the rec center. Our parents dropped us off to go swimming. Afterwards, when we were changing out of our swimsuits, I noticed that there was this probably 7 to 8-year-old boy watching us undress. My friend and I were both very uncomfortable that this boy, relatively close to our age, was watching us undress, and we were very very visibly uncomfortable. So his mother noticed and very rudely basically yelled, "Oh my gosh, you guys, he's just a child. He's younger than you. He's not watching you inappropriately. He's just curious." Being 10-year-old girls who were already uncomfortable, we just cowered it away and finished getting changed in the bathroom stall in privacy. But like, looking back on that, firstly, why weren't you in the unisex family change room? An all-female change room is supposed to be a safe place for young girls. And secondly, what the fuck? It's not up to you to decide what makes someone else uncomfortable. But anyway, moral of the story, please teach your children to respect boundaries of others. It is so important. Please leave a like and subscribe if you want. I truly appreciate when you do, and I will see you in the next Reddit story. Bye!